Every Wednesday night, new topics ignite. Join the journey, let's take flight. Bringing insights that change our view. Derek's voice, clear and true. Tune in each week, discover new light. Life Chat Podcast, reaching new.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Life Chat Podcast. Once again, we are going to have a beautiful night. I believe that we have a very interesting individual with us tonight. When I say interesting, I mean that in the best way possible. I mean the fact that the man has a lot of information, a lot of experience, and I'm sure that he's here to offer some hope to other individuals that have been through life experiences. And I just want to start off by saying that when I first met Tom, I met Tom. Actually, I'll let Tom talk about that. I'll let Tom talk about that. But here's our guest for the night, Mr. L.A. Tommy K. Tommy, can you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And we'll just jump right into the story after.
Okay, I'm originally from the great state of Massachusetts, Boston, and I moved out here to LA about 5 years ago during COVID. Um, I have a daughter out here, and I was just sick of shoveling snow. So we tried it for 4 months, and my wife and I said, "What the hell are we going home for?" So we went back, we sold our house and moved back here, and a few months later, and it's been almost 5 years. And the one thing, the one thing I made sure of is the minute I got here, I got, centered into Alcoholics Anonymous. The LA community out here, really, really strong in, recovery. There's like zillions of meetings, and, like you go to a new place, right? And, you don't know anybody. And, I've been here almost 5 years now, and they're like, I know so many people. I do so much service, and I'm just wired in. But like, that's what they teach us, especially in early recovery. You get centered where the winners are. And, for me, I've just found that, like meetings makers make it. And I got connected into the Fellowship of AA here in LA, and the rest is history. But got a lot of people I know out here, and that's kind of where I am now. But I reached out to you because I saw that you were doing a podcast, and it's like it gives us the opportunity to express the message of hope. A lot of people are struggling out there. I just started going on TikTok about 3 weeks ago as a someone who posts and has their own page and channel. I've been on TikTok for probably. What's that?
At the right time.
Yeah, you did. You caught me at the right time, and it was a God shot, right? And one thing I noticed on TikTok is there's a lot of people in early recovery, and a lot of people are struggling, and people don't talk about, if they're going to meetings or what they're doing. They're just sharing that they're struggling, and it's day 12 or day 30 or day 55. And, that's great to get cheers and everything. But like, how do you stay sober one day at a time? It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, and that's you just mentioned about the amount of people that we see on TikTok. That's how we met. Just for viewers that are watching or listening, that's how we met on TikTok. We connected on there,
That's
and
right.
glad we did. And there are a lot of us. There are a lot of communities on TikTok, um, geared towards sobriety. There's a whole bunch just geared straight specifically towards sobriety. But like you said, there's not really a lot of people that actually just try to work. I'm not going to say individuals, but I don't see a lot of um, solutions. There are a lot of people that talk. Like, a lot of times we're on there talking about different things, about how we're struggling and what's going on with it, what's running through our mind. But I don't hear a lot of solutions on there. But maybe I'm just not in the right area. So I don't want to no disrespect
I,
to anybody.
that's a really good comment. And like, I don't know when I speak on and post on TikTok, I really, being new to this, like I said, it's only been 3 weeks. I don't know what's going to resonate with, the people who are listening. And at the end of the day, I try to just share my truth. What's going on. I might have, 9,952 days today, but at the end of the day, I've only got 24 hours and I struggle with life. Sometimes you feel like shit. Sometimes, you can get to a meeting and you feel all serene and happy and like life is beautiful. And then you start to drive home and somebody cuts you off. Man, that throws you for a ringer. You
Yeah,
want to kill the son of a bitch, right? You
one
know,
little thing, one
one little thing. It's
one
crazy,
little thing,
I was
one
at a
little thing.
meeting. I was at a meeting in New York City, and the guy said, "You're as sober as you drive." And I'm like, it took me a minute to get that one, but Jesus Christ, ain't that the truth? Where's your serenity? Goes right out the friggin' window.
So I want to know you just gave up the amount of days that you have. What does that equal up to in years? Tom?
I got to over 27 years.
Congratulations. I actually thought it was
Yeah,
a little less. I thought it was 22 years, I believe. That's what I thought.
yeah,
I don't know what I was
yeah.
thinking. But
But
congratulations on that.
just keep it in a day, baby. It's one day at a time, right?
Okay. But so
Uh,
to dig in a little deeper, I do have a question. I do have a couple questions for you. Number one, talking about keys in early sobriety. What do you consider to be a couple keys in early sobriety for some of us that maybe just be starting our new life, our new journey. Some people are just getting out of rehab and don't know where to turn, or we don't know how to deal with these feelings and emotions that we have. So, where's the keys that you might have for us?
well, I can only say what I did. And,
Mm-hmm.
as we both established, that was a long time ago. But I think the first thing and the most critical thing is 90 meetings in 90 days. I believe personally, excuse me for my raspy voice, but I believe that you need, like, you're dealing with a life that you're so um, beaten by drugs and alcohol that once you go into rehab and finally surrender, that's the beginning of the end, right? So once you come out of rehab, what do you do? And I think the important thing is, at least worked for me, is I got connected into Alcoholics Anonymous, and there were people who, you know, I don't know, like, I just listened. I didn't, I sat down, I shut up, I took the cotton out of my mouth and stuck it in my, no, I took the cotton out of my ears and stuck it in my mouth. And I shut up and I listened. And, like, people reach out to you, and people know that you're a newcomer. There's no question about it. You walk into a meeting and you don't know where you are. And it's like, I remember when I first walked in, it was like, how the hell did I get here? It's like, oh my God. And but I think that's really like a real key to early sobriety is, 90 meetings in 90 days allows you to get connected, to build a foundation, and to become immersed in people who have the same problem as you, because that's why it works. Like, we're a group of strangers that can reminisce. It's just all of a sudden, when I know that you're an alcoholic or you're suffering from the disease of addiction, all of a sudden, like, the walls come down. And it's like I know who you are and you know who I am, and
Yeah,
it's the same shit, right?
Yeah, that familiarity, being around other people and being able to open up and not feel like you're being judged or looked at totally different because they understand because possibly they may have been in the same situation or done the same thing possibly. Um, so yeah, that's definitely a good point. And you mentioned the 90 meetings in 90 days, which is sometimes we seem. I know. Let me start saying we. I personally feel like that was impossible. When I first started out, actually on the 24th of this month, I had 10 months clean. So, and when I first, this is not my first time going through this, being at this point stage, but I'm just glad I have that. I have another chance to get to this point because a lot of people are not making any to 30 days because of OD thing, the lifestyle. They have to say it. If the drugs don't kill you, the lifestyle will, which includes alcohol. Alcohol is a drug. Um, so I just didn't believe that 90 means 90 days. It was just impossible to me in my thought process. But I did it. Um, I did it because in rehab we had to make meetings. We did the classes were considered meetings. And when I left there and I moved into sober living house, which where I live, we had to do meetings. So it was definitely it happened. It worked for me. But I think the how I wanted to ask you this question with your experiences. How do we how do people get past those thoughts and cravings that come up? What type of tools did you use to combat the thoughts or cravings?
Oh man, there is a great book. There's actually two books. One, Living Sober, I think is like it gives you like just suggestions of what to occupy your time with because that was the biggest thing, right? When I first got sober, you had all this time
Empty
that
time.
like no more scheming, no more lying, no more cheating, no more trying to hook up with a dealer, no more anything, and you're really just left with you, right? And like I kind of felt like I didn't know what to do, but I read this book called Living Sober, and it said, go take a walk, eat some candy, do sheet therapy, which is like take a friggin' nap for Christ's sakes.
Sheep therapy.
Right? I love sheet therapy. That's great. At least I liked it when I was early sobriety. Watch a TV show. Your mind is just so conditioned to the cravings and the thoughts of what you did. That's why I think when we go to rehab, it kind of gives us a little cues of like what to do with our time. And then once you get out, you've got that freedom to like do whatever you want to do. So, you know, take up a new hobby. Go like I know I went to meetings, like I had a big business. So it was hard for me to get to meetings like 3 times a day. But a lot of people who come out of rehab, they got more time on their hands. And look, go do service, go to a food bank, go help somebody else. The best thing you could do for yourself is to go help somebody else because it takes you out of you and puts you it just makes you forget all your shit, you know,
Stuff.
get, right, but if you can get to meetings 3 times a day, go morning, noon, and night. Get connected. Go to coffee. There is just a million things. Take a walk. Go to the beach. Go to the woods. Do all the things and think of the things that you used to do before you were addicted to drugs and alcohol, and things that you used to like, and like go try doing them again. And, but the greatest gift for me is be of service. Go help somebody else.
Glad you mentioned that, and you mentioned the part about going to do things that you used to do or things that you wanted to do, and that's one reason why I always love fishing all my life. I love fishing, and I've been talking about this a lot recently. Go fishing every chance I get. I don't catch anything, but I just love I just love I guess the anticipation to catch something. But I love fishing. It's like being out there by the water. I like being the serenity of it. Just going to the place. But um, eventually I'm gonna make it down to the racetrack. About the drag strip, about the drag strip. Uh, but yeah, I just want to talk about like the keys, the stuff. Still talking about the keys of the recovery, and I don't know what I don't remember what early recovery is. I don't know if it's early recovery being a year or less than a year or anything like that. But in my opinion, like you said, we all have just a day, 24 hours. But also, I I, I remember my first time going through the recovery process, being in the recovery process. Sponsorship was big for me. I had a couple of, I had sponsors, and I still use, So how do you, how, what suggestions would you have for people about sponsorship? Um, what should we look for in a sponsor? Because, a lot of times we hear people say, my sponsor is this, my sponsor is that, and then when their sponsor, if their sponsor does go back out, what are they left with? So, and that's a reality, and that's why I want to talk about that because that happened to me before. What are you left with? So, if you talk about a sponsorship a little
Yeah, look, I've been fortunate. I've had the same sponsor since 6 months of recovery. And my first sponsor had a brain aneurysm. So, like, he couldn't sponsor me. And I wound up working with this other guy. But I remember when I was looking for a sponsor, and this goes hand in hand with going to meetings, right? If I'm going to a lot of meetings, which I highly recommend, then I'm going to hear people and I'm going to see people that are saying different things, and somebody's going to start saying some things that I can relate to, and I like their message. So when I hear that, I'm going to go up to that person. And I think going up to a sponsor to ask them to sponsor you is like going to a friggin' dance and asking a girl to dance with you. Man, it's like full of fear, baby, right? I did not like that game at all. And the first guy I asked, he said no. And I was like,
bit. Rejection, rejection. We do
yes,
not want
right?
rejection.
We are full of fear, but fear means fear means you can face everything and recover, or you can say fuck everything and run. And I choose the former. I'll face my fear and I will ask somebody, because guess what? This is about my life, right? Like, I want to save my life. And I know that the program teaches us to go to meetings, ask for help, get a sponsor, do service, and trust God. And like, I know the God thing is like a really tough topic. And it took me, I got to be honest with you, I always believed in a higher power, and I always wanted to believe in quote unquote God, but it took me 26 years to get there. It took me a long time before, that that part in the big book that talks about Bill's story, and it talks about him being rocketed into the fourth dimension. I never knew what that meant. And last year, 2 years ago, I felt what it was like being rocketed into the fourth dimension. So that kind of really brings up another point. Don't be too smart. Rule 62 is don't take yourself too seriously. Like, remain teachable. Like I do these things called an AWOL, which stands for a way of living or a way of life, and it's a closed meeting of working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's 7 months. It's homework, it's commitment, it's readings, and like I do it every year because I learned something about myself and I stay sober and I'm helping other people. So, look, you guys, early recovery, you could say you got this thing, but you know what? It only takes an isosceles triangle, right? I mean, it's so easy to pick up a drug or a drink. And like, right? I mean, it's just so like,
Easily.
you know, if your sponsor dies on you, get another one. But like, I think it's really tied into the amount of meetings that you go to, because that's where to me, going to meetings is the foxhole, right? That's where the action is. That's where I'm going to hear the pain and the victories and the despair and the hope. And I'll hear somebody who will say a message that will resonate with me, and I'll say, hey, can you please help me? And what we do around here is we don't say no, right? We don't say no, because what was freely given to us, we give it away to someone else, and that's the only way to keep it.
You mentioned about things resonate with you that somebody else would say, and a lot of times I've been a few times, yeah, a few times I actually heard my story, my own story. It was like basically my whole story, seemingly, and if almost verbatim, almost verbatim, but I could really relate to these individuals that were sharing, and that was the comfort. That's where you talked about earlier about being a part of, being a part of the specific group, the certain group, but not making it like not like a clique, but just being able to understand these people and know you can go to these people and basically vent and not just vent, but also get some information and some knowledge that could possibly help you and actually help somebody else later down the line, like you said. And I just wanted to share this too, Tom. There was a couple comments on your on or and just said hi, Tom, and there was another that was hard to hear, Tom. I don't know if it was hard for her to hear me or hard for her to hear you, but that's what it was. But I just wanted to put that up to you. And um, so back to our topic. What do you do now, Tom, to when things come up? What do you do now in your lifestyle that helps you move past thoughts, situations, or cravings? Because we can't deny the fact that those that thoughts and cravings are going to come up. We always got a situation, but being a person in recovery, we're going to have thoughts and cravings. And what do you do now? You said earlier about finding ways to distract yourself, being in early recovery. But what do you do now? Because you're no longer in early recovery, uh, but you are in recovery. So what do you do now, Tom?
Well, two things, and I know this is a broken record, but I go to meetings every day, right? And like, I go to a lot of beginners meetings, and I go to beginners meetings because I love to see people just coming in the program, because it reminds me I don't have to go back there. That was me 27 years ago. And I see the red faces and the flapping legs, and I'm like, you do it, buddy. I'm not going down there. And my point is that when I go to meetings, that this is where I find people I can help. And getting myself out of me is the one thing that keeps my thoughts, and I have a million of them. I don't have thoughts of cravings, but I have thoughts of worthlessness and inadequacy and trust issues and abandonment issues. And, your mind can play tricks on you. So I try to meditate, I try to pray. And the one thing that I felt always helps me, go have coffee with somebody, you know, get be of service. Like, I can't continue to say that enough, that when I'm helping somebody else, I'm forgetting about me and the thoughts of, like, look, I'm in my 60s, right? And like,
No, you're
I've
not.
been working for, yeah,
You're about
yeah, I'm
you're about
alive.
35. You're about
Yeah, I wish I
35.
was. I think I'm 35, but I'm not. And, like, career wise, like, there's age discrimination. So I think that I can't get enough work because, I'm old or something. And your mind starts to play with you of like you're just not good enough, and what's it worth, right? Is it worth it to continue to pray and meditate? Because does it really work? But then when I go help somebody else, I get right out of me, right? And that has been my key to staying sober for all these years is I really try to go help somebody else who's feeling worse than I am or even better than I am. But at least I can have a conversation about like what's really going on, and I think that's the thing with the fellowship of any kind of 12-step program is that we can connect on a very visceral level that like I'm not bullshitting you, right? We're not bullshitting each other because we know we are
Over there.
bullshitters to begin with, right? So it's like
Don't be
you
talking
just
about
know
us
how.
like that, Tom.
What's
Talk
that?
about us. Don't talk about us like that.
But it's true. It's true. And but the thing that makes it work is that right, we can laugh at each other, right? We can laugh at each other. And that was the one thing you talked about early recovery. The first meeting I ever went to was in a great white church in Boston. And you had to walk down the steps because all the meetings are in church basements. And I was walking down the steps and I heard the laughter, and the laughter is what got me, right? The laughter, because you could go, come on, Derek, I'm sure you can relate to this. You could go to a meeting and everyone's laughing and joking about, you can relate to somebody's story, but then they talk about something that's really hits your heart and the room is silent, right? And you could hear a pin drop because we know how it feels. And I think
Because,
that's why it works. I really do. I
because
think that's why it works.
like you just said, but knowing that pain, like knowing the rough stuff, when the rough stuff is talked about or expressed, and we know those feelings that come along with it. We know the guilt. We know how it feels when everything basically crumbles, or we go back out and we have to start over. Those just that's just one situation. Like the relapse part. That whole part is a killer for me, and that's why I don't. I try to stay connected now. I might not do. That's one thing that also I had to remember that what works for me may not work for the next person. It may not work for you. My recovery is my recovery, and my process is my process. It might not be exactly the same, but we're working toward the same goal. I think sometimes we believe there's a lot of people get misconstrued as like a cookie cutter thing, and it's not. Everybody's going to have a different process because we all had different struggles and we're different individuals. But I just wanted to get into that part because I wanted to lead into um, which is sad, which is sadly a reality of the relapse part. We talked about early recovery and we talked about being connected with the process and the people. But I want to talk about now. This is a dangerous time for us because the weather is getting well. You're in LA. You're in LA, so your weather is a little different than here. I'm in Delaware, so it's a little different. But I'm jealous. I'm jealous, Tom. But no, the weather, the season is changing. The weather's getting better. People starting to do cookouts and barbecues and steaming the crabs. A lot of times people steam the crabs with beer and the beer cans all around. Everybody's hanging out at the beaches. It's a dangerous time for us as being people in recovery. I know specifically for me, it took me a while to get over the fact that I've had trouble dealing with cookouts, barbecue, just because of the atmosphere and the music and the you know the activities that's associated with cookouts and barbecues. That's a rough time. That's rough for me. So I just don't. I believe that in early recovery, I'm just gonna say for me, it was hard to be by myself in a lot of situations. Have you felt that way? Have you dealt with those type of situations, or what have you had to go through to get to where you are with those situations?
Well, the first thing I'll say is, fortunately for me, relapse has just not been part of my story. All right. I came in February 5th, 1998, and I haven't had the need to do any more research and development. So
No more
I'm very fortunate, right?
research and
However,
development.
right, yeah, but like, I don't I just like I don't know, I came in and I stuck and like I don't know why. I don't all I did was not drink, right? I went to
Mhm.
meetings and I didn't drink. And that's all I did and I did it as best as I could. But I know like when I was in early sobriety, I would have to go to situations like you talked about a barbecue or weather's getting nice. Like life, just because we get sober, life doesn't stop, right?
Yep.
And like I know, when I first got sober, I had to visit my mother, who was at the time, I think, in Florida, and, not only does family know how to push your buttons, they install the motherfuckers, right? Right?
Tom,
And it's like,
you're talking
right?
directly to me now, Tom.
Right?
Woo.
But it's true, right? And it's like,
Yes, sir.
how do you deal with going to see your family when they put you off jag, man, and they make you feel all the shitty feelings that you felt before you stopped drinking and drugging. And the suggestions that were given to me was twofold. Pick up the phone when you're feeling queasy and call somebody. It's called contrary action. My head wants to go deep into the shit, and my contrary action is pick up the phone, call my sponsor, and talk me off the friggin' ledge. That's number one. Number two is if you're in an area where, let's say you're going to a barbecue, let's say it's on the waterfront, and you're going to be with friends and family and all that stuff, have an exit plan, right? Think through what could happen, what could go wrong while you're at the event. Maybe you have somebody that you're confident with in AA or NA, whatever program you're in, and they go with you, or bring your own car, but have an exit plan. I think those are two things that are really critical, that are contrary to what your action would normally be. And that's why we call it, like I heard the term out here in LA, it's called contrary action. And it really makes a lot of sense. My mind wants to do one thing, but I'm going to do the opposite.
Absolutely. That's a bad feeling. I've been in those situations a lot. Knowing that's something that I'm thinking about is going to lead me down the wrong path. Definitely down the wrong path. So I start to try to move away from it. But then the thought comes back. Like the thought, I just and that's another key. Like the thoughts that come in, not to build on those thoughts, not to let those thoughts continue to just run and run and run. Because eventually going to act on those thoughts. Me personally,
Right.
um, just dwelling on them. They say these cravings and thoughts, whatever cravings last for 10 minutes, I believe. They say about 10 to 15 minutes, or maybe shorter. I don't know. But um, I know that having somebody to be able to call that's going to be that's going to be able to talk us off the ledge is a huge part of my recovery process. I always say me because I can't speak for anybody else but myself. But and it doesn't have to necessarily have to be somebody that's it don't necessarily have to be a sponsor. It don't necessarily have to be somebody that's in recovery. And sometimes we just want. I believe that sometimes I just want to be able to vent, just to get it out. Don't need a response all the time. But the solution to that is to have somebody that can give you, the answer. Possible. A lot of times I believe it's just I just want to talk about it, just get it out. So that was a key for me. And it still is a key. I just want to hear it. To hear it, be said by myself. So, Mr. Tom,
Well, before you ask your next question, I have a comment, and that is, so what happens when you don't have that person? whether it's your sponsor or somebody else, to vent to or to run it by. That's where I believe when we get into step two and step three, I believe that I need to have a total understanding and be able to utilize step two and step three to like not do the things that I normally do. I mean, step two came to believe in a power greater than myself, and step three made the decision to turn it over. So, what does that really mean? That means that if I'm unsure of something and if I'm thinking that I should do X, then if I could check with my higher power, and that higher power could be my dog, it doesn't, as long as it ain't me, then I have some stopgap to be able to say, hold on, this might not be the right thing to do. And I think that's so hard in human emotions to like not react to something because we are type A personalities. We are go, 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 and we want instant gratification. And I think that, like, if I'm really working step two and step three, then like that's the piece that allows me to stop and not to act on the thought because it's so easy to rifle off an email or a text or say something I'm going to regret or do something that I'm going to regret. But, what a beautiful thing that we have is to have this higher power that I can say, hey, is this the right thing for me to do right now? Does it have to be said? Does it have to be said by me? Does it have to be said by me now? And I think that's like looking at it practically, it allows me to not react so I don't have to say I'm sorry or I don't have to regret what I just did or said. And I think that's part of recovery. It's got nothing to do with drinking. We're dealing with our alcohol isms, that instant gratification, that need to like feed the animal, whether it's sex or smoking or eating or drink, whatever it is, you know, that's the stopgap. And like, so when there's nobody around, I remember I was 18 years sober and the urge came over me to drink. Like it was so powerful, I didn't know what to do with it. And I got my ass to a meeting, and I was the last one to share. And I even talked about I felt like drinking, and I knew a fair amount of people in that meeting, and nobody came up to me after the meeting, not one person. So then it was between me and God. That's what kept me sober. So I just really believe find a higher power because, I'm just not that powerful. I can't handle it sometimes. I hope that answers your question.
And that was a good point that you made. That sometimes it's just going to be you and whatever you believe, whatever you believe
Right.
in, believe, whatever, however you want to see it. I don't like to get
Right.
into the whole religion thing
Nope.
too way too far. But I'm glad you mentioned that because there's going to be a lot of situations where it's just going to be you, whatever.
Right.
How we gonna deal with it then? Just leave that thought right there. How we gonna deal with it then? When it's just me in the situation, me in the situation, nobody there. And uh, it's rough when you ever made the phone call and nobody picks up, and it's still
Yeah.
you in the situation.
Right.
That's a serious issue, and that's a dangerous situation to be in. And so we still have to have something. We still have to have something to hold on to. We have to have a way out. Like you mentioned exit plan earlier about the barbecue, cookout, wherever parties, whatever.
Yeah.
Not only do we have to have the physical exit plan, we have to have the exit plan up here, mind as well, to get out of that mindset, get out of the thought, get out of the way of ourselves. Get out of the way of myself. And
Right.
yeah, but
Go go ahead.
I just want to know if you had anything else, Tom. L.A. Tommy K.
I can only say that sober's better. Like I think that, like we're given, we are freely given the gift of sobriety, and like uh, you know, like the race isn't always to the swift. Like slow me down a little bit. Let me look at a cloud, a flower, to pet a dog, to read a few lines of a good book. Remind me that the race, that the oak tree grew great and strong because it grew slowly and well. Like slow down, be where your feet are. Like one thing my kids really got out of me being as a sober dad, you know, they always look at the sunrise and the sunset. They appreciate the beautiful things that this earth has to offer. And like, I think we get so wrapped up in ourselves that there was an exercise. I'm a big step guy, okay, Derek? And I found this Buddha's version of the 12 steps that takes the God thing completely out of the picture. And one of the exercises it suggested to do, and like just take this and apply it to something else. But have you ever, like when you grab a cup of coffee, right? You get the cup, you pour the coffee, you stick it in your mouth. Have you ever slowed down to see the mechanics of grabbing a cup, pouring coffee into it, pulling it to your mouth, and drinking it and swallowing it? My point is this, that if we didn't do everything by rote and we took the time to appreciate what is happening around us, that acute awareness, that is being present and being where your feet are. And I really think that sobriety has given me the opportunity to smell the friggin' roses, and I just like, um, I'm so grateful that I get to meet people along this journey that offer me so much compassion and sensitivity and authenticity and truth. And I think that like being going to meetings and meeting people in the fellowships allows us to be vulnerable. Like, we're all just bodies of broken bones, and sometimes the decisions we make screw us up, and sometimes the decisions that we don't make screw us up even more. But, our brokenness is our source of our humanness and and that's like human compassion. So I don't know. I think that's what sobriety's given me is an opportunity to, take a mulligan. And that's a golf term if you're not
I,
familiar with
I
golf.
was wondering. I don't.
Like when you play golf on the first tee, you're just warming up. So we call taking a second shot, that's a mulligan. So,
I'm
I
with
got a
you.
mulligan, right? I got a mulligan to life. And like, that's really cool. That, getting sober really gives us an opportunity to like be right. And I think there is a God in all of us. And I've come to understand my own conception of God. It's the love, it's the light in my heart, it's the honesty, and it's the knowing right from wrong, and it's to do the right thing. And I think that pureness of the love in my heart is God. And once I continue to, push that out, like how can I be resentful, negative, and angry without blocking that love? Right? The two can't coexist. So, I choose love. And, look, I'm still an asshole. I just don't show it as
Stop it.
often.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Don't We'll just stuff down to say it.
No. I'm still an asshole. I just don't show it as much. That's all.
Well, you haven't shown it thus far, so I appreciate it.
Okay.
You haven't shown
Is
it.
that
But
is that it? Is that the end of the show?
that's what we're gonna do, man. We're gonna wrap it up right now. I just want to
Okay.
thank you, Tommy, LA Tommy K. I want to say thank you for thank you for following through what you said you were gonna do. And just for anybody that was watching, anybody that will be watching later on, um, that are in early recovery or possibly know someone that's in early recovery, take heed to these steps, take heed to these lessons and discussed tonight from LA Tommy K. And just be able to give ourselves a break and live a better or prosperous life. So, with that being said, I want to say thank you, Tommy. Thank you for
Thank
everybody that
you.
watched. Thank you for everybody. Thank you everybody that watched later. Have a good night. Be safe. Be blessed.
Peace out. Thank you.
Welcome to the Life Chat Podcast, seeking the truth with Derek Powell, navigating you through. Every Wednesday night, new topics ignite. Join the journey, let's take flight. Bringing insights that change our view. Derek's voice, clear and true. Tune in each week, discover new light. Life Chat Podcast, reaching new heights.